I watched a wristwatch crawl along the edge of a straight razor. That's my dream, my nightmare. Crawling, slithering along the edge of a straight razor and surviving. Everyone gets everything he wants. I wanted a watch. And for my sins, SEIKO gave me the SBDC109. Brought it up to me like room service. It's a real choice watch. And when I got it, I never wanted another one. G'day guys, how's it going? Welcome back, of course, to the Time Bomb channel. I hope all is good in your part of the world, and yes, we are going full watch nutter today. A few years back, the word Willard rang in the air, was whispered, was sighed. You would think that they were praying to it. The hype machine had kicked in and jumped squarely onto the back of the movie's success. Apocalypse Now has always been one of my top three favourite movies, alongside The Big Lebowski, The Life of Brian, all of which I've watched so many times I almost know the scripts. So with that movie connection, you'll understand easily why the watch already grabbed my danglies. I've not seen any movies about the British Army's very short deployment in Vietnam, so if you know of one, please do let me know. The watch community likes names, and so it's logical that the Willard handle has stuck to this particular watch. But SEIKO, I think, have been a little cheeky in appropriating that name and have rudely ignored multiple other previous wearers in the process. And of course, the watch is only a homage of the 6105, so a tenuous link to Captain Willard at best. Let me just pause there and zoom in a little. So perhaps, rather than calling it the Willard, we should call it the Redux. No 6105, no Willard, and rather like the Redux movie, it contains stuff that makes no sense to the thinking man. In my short unboxing, you may have picked up a clue with the first one of that, and the first one is the bracelet. I think it's the ideal comparison to the French rubber plantation scene in the movie. It doesn't fit the movie, nor does the case body fit nor does the strap bracelet fit the case body. You look at the differences there in the brushing, the fit into the main body here as well. That doesn't work. In addition to which, it is so absurdly jangly. It feels almost tinny. I think the brushing doesn't match. That hollow looseness that you've got to it almost stinks more than your average camembert. I think back to the last SEIKO that I had, it was the MM200. The bracelet on that was sleek, silky, really, really nice. This one, I'm afraid, is really quite disappointing. If I can just see through the camera here. In addition to which, I think the clumsy overacting in that plantation scene is somewhat akin to the pretty redundant, unnecessary dive extension in here. On the upside, the dial to me, it's could be compared perhaps to the digital remastering of the movie. I think the dial, the bezel combination, hands, everything like that works absolutely brilliantly together. The lines of the case body are very, very, very slinky indeed. Sorry, I got some fingers all over this. It's not like the stubby nose perhaps then of a Huey, and you guys will get my drift, and probably enough with those comparisons. Perfect watches are all different for all of us, and that makes sense. It's the compromises that you are going to find along that straight razor. Somewhat like the missing insignia of Colonel Kilgore's hat, some of the compromises on the Willard are, yes, the unsigned crown. It's a very cheap fail. They can do the 6-slot lock version. They did it on the SLA, so why couldn't they have done it here? You can't tell me it was that expensive. Looking up closely on the dial, you can see that the hour markers all feature that lovely frame, but they neglected to frame the date window. The movement inside the 6R35 is somewhat like the scene, I think, with the Playboy bunnies in that helicopter. Some seem to get lucky, but many seem to have issues maintaining accuracy. Worse still, if you get a movement that was built during lockdown, it is more than less likely to run badly. Consequently, on the watch blogs, the 6R35 is the subject of much heated debate. This particular one, though, is from this year, and I hope it will be solid. And I got this one from Gnome, and they time graphed it for me before sending it as well, just to give me that additional reassurance. I have tried some of the Willard homages. Somebody please tell me when they named this brand that they knew what they were doing. However, I recognise that I'm too damn obsessive and the homages didn't work for me. None of them have this bezel action either. I'll just shut up and listen to this. Nice. Very, 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 very nice. Very easy to play with. It lines up well. There's no backplay in it either. Yeah, again, thanks to GNOME, they really did sort me out with a proper one here. I think homages, as I mentioned before, to me it was a little bit being out of the jungle and always thinking about getting back into the jungle. So to me, I think what SEIKO have done with this one is to succeed in creating a watch which has modern updates, but still doffs its cap to its forebears. And I think at the same time, speaking personally, it's also important to mentally separate this watch from the movie and its history, because as today, it's a modern tool watch. It's robust. It's clearly in search of a few dings. It's good to look at, and it is ultra wearable. I've had it on every day this week and I can't get the damn thing off. And I think one of the reasons for that success is the dimensions. Yes, it's wide across, but it's very short, top to bottom, north to south. And I think that's one of the key specs that needs that extra recognition, because it allows the watch to sit on a much wider range of wrists. My wrist is 7¼ and it's not small at all. And it just sits so very, very nicely indeed. I have seen recently some people talking about removing the case back and putting a flush fitting one in there. Then that will allow, just because as you can see, the lugs don't really hang down that much below. They're almost on a par. So if you were to scoop that out with a flush fitting case back, again, that would allow some additional cushioning there on wrist. The lume on the watch isn't as bright as a flashbang, but it is far more soothing. Note also this one being, I think, what they call the third iteration. It comes with the updated lume pip at the 3 o'clock. I believe there's a fourth version coming out of the factories soon, and I was talking to a couple of other watch providers and they didn't know whether the new versions are going to have that 3 o'clock lume pip or not. Again, you know, some people love it, some people prefer it without. Yeah. Moving on, and let's try and address the Colonel Kurtz alignment issues. SEIKO continued taking the piss. Thankfully, though, in speaking to GNOME watches, I was able to get a good one. Spent a lot of time talking to them via email, and they were really, really, really very helpful. And huge thanks to them for taking the time to help me out with that. I don't work with GNOME. This isn't paid. I paid, the price that they were asking for this one. But as I say, I'm pretty impressed with everything on this one. But it does strike me as being a plain silly process when buying a watch, and it's such a middle finger to the punters. I can appreciate fully why people get so irate with the brand. I did, though, recently read on a watch blog that due to the volume of watch sales or the volume of watches that SEIKO produce, the QC department focuses more on the higher end pieces. So some slippage has to be accepted. Now, to me, that's a freaking lame defense, and shame on the author for trying to justify it. But it does resonate with this concept of the quality of SEIKO's watches. They're producing, the under the $1,000 price watches, which have, which aren't perfect, in order to push punters more in the direction of the £1,000, £2,000 watches. It's clearly a strategic shift from SEIKO, and yeah, they're saying, right, if you want the real quality, you've got to spend over $1,000. Talking of which, the price on these things, though, I think now is much more realistic than it was a couple of years back. If you don't buy from SEIKO directly, you can pick these up for less. Yes, that's less than the new gradation Sumo and that hugely overpriced, ridiculously overpriced Slim Turtle. The RRP on these to me is unreasonable. I don't see the £1,250 value in this watch. I just don't see it at all. Even less so with this jangly bracelet. It even squeaks. It hasn't been properly oiled in some respects. But GNOME had this on offer at over £500 off the UK price, in addition to which it's the Japanese version. So one would assume that it's they pay more attention to the alignment, etc. So for me, it was an absolute no-brainer. I don't think I want to start comparing this to the Mass or the Slim Turtle or other turtles. That's a little bit of a slippery slope and can drag on a little bit. But I think one thing I would like to see is a recreation of the 6306 one day. I think that was the longest serving turtle after all. Talking about the dial, to my eyes, it's quite hypnotic in its simplicity. That red dot on the seconds hand is vital. It just adds that very, very, very needy splash of colour onto the dial. You know, but it's just small enough that it's almost imperceptible, but also visible enough to make it so important. I think in addition to which the handset works well within its surroundings, the polish and the angles and the shines and the markers and the blobs, they all sit very well alongside each other. But imagine, one last little suggestion, imagine it now though with a blacked out date wheel. The final touch, the pièce de résistance. The slab of crystal up top is omnipresent, and many comment on how much they prefer it to the old Hardlex. The chamfering even does remind me a little bit of the Doxa subs, and it's actually so severe that the visual effect is almost to reduce or shrink the dial. The dial aperture itself is actually 30 mils across, but then with the chamfering, you know, you can drop that down to 36. And I think there was one downside to the crystal. I mean, I like it. The one downside though is that if you view the watch from this side, the date window disappears completely. Just to note, not that I typically read the date window from that angle, it's just a mysterious observation. There should be nothing mysterious to a watch nutter, unless of course it be the watch itself, which is unashamedly the mistress of his or her own existence. And I admit that the Willard has been the mistress of my existence for way, way, way too long. Time to start fixing some of those wrongs. The first place is the strappage. So here I've got the Redux on a variety of other straps that I think might work. Time will tell which one fits best. Additionally, if you have any strap suggestions, I'd be very keen to hear them, please, because as you guys know, they can make or break a watch. In conclusion, as the cool steel of this wristwatch tickles my wrist, I'll say that I don't think it's not a remarkable watch, but it is a very, 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 very cool watch. I can't stop wearing it, and I can't stop looking at it. I wonder if this Redux will inspire you to acts of daring do, or in my case, it calms the soul of the afflicted watch obsessive. If it does all those things for you as well, huzzah to that. And I think I'll finish there, guys. Really looking forward to your comments on this one. Thanks always for your time and your view, and catch you all in the next watch vid. Cheers.